They are, it sounds like they are. You know, they still have to look into it on their end and talk to their. But they want to proceed further with me. It would benefit, you know, the whole community, you know, and plus it would be a bit of probably expense on the public. You know, or at least our council probably.
Regular board meeting call to order and roll call. Bailey?
Here.
Colton?
Here.
Zach?
Here.
Brian?
Here.
Next we'll have the pledge of allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Statement of purpose. This meeting is a meeting of the Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business and is not to be considered a public community meeting. There's a time for public participation during the meeting as indicated in the agenda. Verification of meeting notice,
Posted as required.
agenda revisions and approval.
Make a motion to accept the agenda as it's presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Public comment. This is a time visitors and guests may address the board on any agenda item. The board president, at her discretion, may limit comments to no longer than 5 minutes. Welcome, everyone. We don't have any requests for public comment, so we will move to the consent agenda. Did you want to talk about any of that, Chris?
Yeah, so we've attached the revenue report, expense report, assets report. Starting to get into the preliminary budget for the year, which we're gonna talk about later, so I'll just leave it open to questions for you if you have any questions in there right now, otherwise it'll be addressed when we go over the budget.
I had staff health services, it was at 43%.
Okay, so we had a number of new staff that required physicals. So the new teacher physical / drug screening would count for that.
Okay, admin tech was at 14,000, is that purchase of computers prior to the start of the school year?
So there's a lot that fits into that category.
Okay,
There was an $8,900 fee that was approved in May for Chromebooks for 5th graders. But that also, Carrie, what was the other?
Yep,
thing?
is Skyward, the
Thank
tech
you.
services for
Yep.
Skyward.
So overall, all of the services for Skyward, so that's our student information system that houses all of our data. We do all our special ed records through there, all of our intervention stuff, all of our behavior data, everything is housed through Skyward. And overall, that runs us about $20,000 a year to use Skyward.
okay.
And believe it or not, that is the cheapest one in the state, and over 80% of school districts use Skyward. So.
And the Board of Education fund showed 2,900 of 4,500 was used.
That is for the school board's WASB fees, so that's for your annual fees as a school board. To do all your updates and meetings and professional training.
Okay. And the last one, food service is over 100%.
That is in error. Wrong number was entered, that is missing the 0. So,
Okay,
good thing about that.
perfect. Did you have anything on the personnel report you wanted to?
Yes, personnel report, thank you. So we do, as you know, we have reduced the number of staff in the kitchen over the past couple of years. We had 3 part-time people doing kitchen staff duties. We have also reduced our overall maintenance team. As you know, Carrie Peterson works for us, and she's been doing a great job working part-time, but we do need some help in the kitchen area. We're not able to fill all those positions, and rather than posting a couple of part-time positions, we felt that it makes more sense to have her move to full-time. So that's the proposal for her, from her to go to 0.7 to a full-time, and then her title would become food services / custodian. She'd have a similar contract to, the other custodians. And then second, we are in need of a business manager or business services. Carrie and I have been doing our best to do that, but that's not something that we had a lot of experience in coming in, and we knew that coming into the year. We have been getting some help from outside sources, and a lot of it has been donated by them, which is nice. But we feel that in order for us to get the training and stuff needed for the district, we want to be more proactive and less reactive. We don't want to end up in a situation where we have a surplus like we did last year. We should be within 5% of our total amount, and that's our goal for this year. And so that's the proposal for that. So Jamie Morath works for CISA 2 for business services. We're able to finally find someone to contract with, which is great. So she'll serve as overarching head of the business department, and then mentoring Carrie and I until we're able to take that over. So what you'll see is a 0.10 or 0.15 full-time equivalent for that position. So it's tough to put a quantity on the amount of hours because it really is going to be 4 to 6 hours a week. But business-wise, it depends on the time of the year. It's very busy now through November. You kind of have a dry spot, and then it's busy again from March till the end of the year. So there are times of the year where it's very busy. So for us to average out the hours, we're kind of doing best guess based off of what their contracts are with other districts with similar needs.
It's good we can do that. Anybody have any questions on the consent agenda?
Is there like an estimated cost on what that would cost for Jamie on the year?
Yes. Yep. You're looking at between 18,000 and 27,000. That's what Carrie and I figured too. Good question. And if you look at the total dollar amount of administrative pay, so if you look at administrative pay from last year we had 2 administrators in the district. We had district administrator, business / elementary principal, and then you had my role as well. If you look at the pay this year for the 2 administrators between myself and Angie over at Intermediate, our total dollar amount for administrative pay, even including the CISA payment, is still less than what we paid last year. So I think we're still in line with where we need to be.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We show no old business, so next we go into new business. So the first couple are the handbooks.
Yep.
Um,
I can display it and go over the things that were changed in there, or how do you want to do it?
You could do that. One of the things that,
Or we can just answer your questions, however you'd like to do that.
the chain of command, it's talked about at the beginning of those, but it really doesn't spell it out, so I kind of like it spelled out with an example, like say, if somebody has an issue with a coworker or teacher, they go to that person first. If not the supervisor, if not that supervisor's backup, then if not the board, but just so it's all kind of spelled out for parents, for teachers, for anybody that they have a reference. So it's kind of clearly spelled out. Just an example of what it would be.
So coworker,
If it's with a coworker, they try to resolve it with the coworker first.
and then they would go to supervisor,
Supervisor.
and then they would go to,
Go
or
to
a
the backup
designee.
supervisor, yep.
Okay.
So for example, if you were the supervisor and it didn't get resolved, they go to the backup supervisor, which would be Angie. Okay,
I do believe there were some
Vice
issues
versa,
too with
yep.
questioning about if there's a staff complaint against an administrator.
Yep.
That was not clear in the past,
yes,
and so, let's say that Mrs. Smith-Inman wants to make a complaint against me, then she would not make that complaint against me, her first step would be to go to the other administrator, which would be
Angie.
Mrs. Hose.
Yep.
If that was not resolved, then it would go to the school board. So I think that needs to be evident as
Yep.
well, because
Yes.
that was not clear in the past.
Yeah, if that could be spelled out, that would be great.
Okay, I can add that in for sure.
Another thing I saw, not a big thing, but emergency closing and delays, it talks about the radio, talks about TMJ4. I don't think it hurts to mention Facebook, because I do see that you guys put it out on Facebook too. Does everybody else want, did you get a chance to go through the handbooks? Do you want to look at them online? What would you like to do? Discuss the changes?
I haven't had a chance to look at it yet.
So I'll probably just.
Okay,
The big,
so if you want to kind of summarize what you.
trying a new system and it's not working. Try to use two screens because I can't, I feel like I'm getting older and I can't see.
Two screens is awesome.
Just did a big jump.
I got 3 now at work, I'm getting rid of 3 days.
I would like a 3. 2's perfect.
Alright. So I did highlight the, areas that we wanted to change.
I knew you didn't look at it, Zach, because your email was wrong.
Yeah, I misspelled your name on purpose to see if you noticed.
I caught it for you, Zach, I got your back.
Okay. So language is updated here. The first part would have been under termination of benefits. If an employee is terminated or completed their year, they will have long-term disability insurance and all district coverage through June 30th of that year. Language is updated in that section. It did not specify through the end of the month of June, that has been the practice for the past 2 years, which was missing in this section. Personal leave, last year it was changed to 1 day. I'm recommending that we give 2 days back to all professional staff. So 2 days or 16 hours of paid personal leave. And then I added some additional language in there that those seeking personal time should submit requests in writing to the district administrator no less than 2 weeks prior to the request of personal time date. And it's neither guaranteed nor to serve as vacation or sick leave. And I have examples of personal day usage there. I feel like a lot of staff felt that that was almost a slap in the face to lose that personal day, and I agree with that. So I feel like that we need to add in that second day for people.
How many days did they go, they went from how many to?
It would, gosh, it was 0. Yeah, so I mean, it was always standard practice at 2 or 3.
Well, was 3 usually is one, they got us to 2,
Yeah.
and then they went to 0.
Okay.
I have been in talks with other districts too about incentives. There's a lot of talk about how do we help teachers out and maybe possibly get some more benefits for teachers. So there was one option of things that aren't being used, like if you don't use a personal day, it can go towards a long-term bank of sick days. So there's different options I think we should look at in the future to like incentivize staff to, if they, because otherwise I don't want people to say, well, I have to use it or I'm gonna lose it. I want them to retain it somehow.
Can I ask why it has to go to 2, why I can't go back to 3?
There's no reason why it can't. if
And
you
that's
feel
one of
like
the
it's
things
necessary.
we want to talk about at the policy committees. We want to talk, we talked about it last night, that we want to talk about this policy specifically because it came up kind of across the board during our visits last year. And we want to expand the reasoning that people can take it.
And I think that'd be a great thing to talk about with the committee is what would staff like to see, or what would the community see as being fair? Is like, hey, I didn't use my personal days, how do I as an employee get benefit from that?
And then
Do they get a money stipend for not using them? Do they get it rolled over into like a long-term sick pay gain? Something like that. I think that we should come up with options and we can, amend the handbook at any time during the year to add those in for staff.
Yeah, so we can leave it like this for now, but that's one of our first goals with the policy committee is to talk about that.
I would say definitely see comparable to other districts too.
Fond du Lac School District is 3, as of last year they were at 3. You could call around and find out.
Local areas are either master's stipend, there is a shift. There was kind of, you know, we had the steps and lanes, then Act 10 came, then it was paid for performance, and then it was like, hey, nobody knows what to do to pay teachers, or our pay scales are all messed up. So we try to do kind of a retention bonus, kind of like a paid for performance type of thing, when we redid the pay 2 years ago. A lot of districts are moving more towards stipend pay now. So what we're looking at is, you know, do you have a degree that's gonna help the district? Do you have multiple licenses? Like, do you have an additional license in special education, which is a hard area to fill, then you should get a stipend. If you have an administrative license, so that way if I'm on the building or Andy's on the building, we can have an administrator in charge. Well, if you do, then the district should pay the stipend. If you have a master's degree in a high area, like reading specialist, those would be areas of stipend. We currently only have one stipend, it is for a master's degree. It was only $500, which again, I think is very low. When I first started in the district, when I was asked to amend the handbooks, it was $2,500. I just put $1,500 in there as a place to start to begin the conversation. Last I checked, even at $2,500, you're low. We're low. The districts that I did find out information on are quite bigger and their pay is a lot higher to begin with. But to give you an example, West Penn pays $4,000 for a stipend. I think it got increased to that this year. So the master's degree is a big thing. And if this is something that you think, okay, we should look at the overall pay scale and how that's going to be impacted, we can wait to address it that way too. I just felt like the $500, I mean, once you take taxes out of it, I don't really know what kind of benefit that is for someone who went to school for all the extra expertise.
In my mind, if they went to school that long, they should go get the job that they're qualified for, not be teaching at a lower level and just get paid higher for it just cause.
Well, yeah, we have to look at is what is the demand in this district versus a district like West Bend. There's higher tax revenue, there's more people, there's more students, there's a larger body with a higher demand for more of those positions. We have to take a master's degree, so I think we have to also look at how we compare to a district like that and what the necessities are for people here to hold those positions that require a master's degree.
Right, I agree that if the person is using that education in their current job position, they should definitely be compensated for that. But if, the janitor has a master's degree in art, I don't think we should be giving him extra money for that, because he's not being utilized in his current position. I mean, I agree that if they're bringing those tools to the table, they should be compensated for that, but it should be that it pertains to the job they're doing.
Okay, so I have a follow-up question for you, for an example. So Mrs. Oxner, use you as an example. Not, this isn't real, but I'm just gonna use you. So let's say Mrs. Oxner has a master's in reading. She's a first grade teacher. There's quite a bit of reading taught in that class. She's not employed as a reading teacher, but I would argue that she for sure deserves that stipend because she is one of the most important people teaching reading at that grade level.
I would completely agree with you.
Okay.
What I'm saying is like the example that I gave, that if we had someone in, like I said, a custodian that had a bachelor's in something, or, you know, or a master's in something, and it has nothing to do with what they're doing. You know, whereas obviously if teachers has a master's degree in reading and they're teaching at any level, that pertains to what they're doing.
It could be spelled out that way in the handbook, that if it's part of the staff, it's educators.
If it's part of a curriculum that they're teaching.
They look at it.
It should definitely be, people should be compensated for their qualifications, just as long as their qualifications are needed in the position they're in.
Okay, but on that note then too, is it possible then for us to look at the language of the way the contracts are written up with these individuals, that we do compensate where we have a longer tenure than they're expected to serve out here within the district, so that we don't provide them the assets financially that they need to be reimbursed with a stipend for the master's degree, but then they take that qualification and go on to a more lucrative district. Down the road, leaving us holding the bag, then where we then again have to hire somebody in and maybe be put in the same spot where we're paying somebody else in to go after a master's in another one. I mean, we don't want to be farming out people to more lucrative
that's a good point, and that's if we entertain the idea of doing a stipend. This is for those that have already received it and paid for the school on their own. So that's probably not clear enough, and that needs to be added as well, saying like, this is for this is not paid by the district, this is paid for by the staff member. So that would need to be clear also.
Yeah, right, this is a stipend that for an education they already have.
We got on their own, not that we're paying for.
Correct, yep, so we'd have to change that language in there too.
But to that end too, if we do offer a stipend for continuing education, there should be some kind of, if the district reimburses a person for that continuing education, there should be some requirements that the person stays part of the district or has to reimburse the district for some of the education they received. For instance, I went through a 4-year apprenticeship in my trade, and I had to pay, if I chose to leave the trade within 4 years of topping out into my journeyman's ticket, I had to pay $10,000 a year if I didn't wait at least 4 years. So it was an incentive to, if they're gonna invest in me, I stick around and give them a quality employee.
I had to get it for 2 years for mine.
Right. And that's just a personal example from my line of work.
I think this has to be readdressed again. I
So
don't-
we want to table just
Table
that.
it.
So I can put it back at the $500 for now and we'll leave it. until
For now, we'll
work
just have
session.
one of our top policies to look at.
Okay.
The policy committee. So I do agree, they should get something if it's a way to retain some good teachers. It's not a full raise, but we got teachers that stay here because they really just like being here. Keep that, be good.
So he's returning it to 500, which had been previously. And then we can revisit it.
That's policy committee, yep.
Sounds good. These were confirmed, those are my notes to check with Carrie, if those were still accurate, they were. Updated the language for employees for contacting a substitute teacher in the event of an absence, so they had to contact the immediate supervisor, report the absence in Skyward, and contact the sub-finder or equivalent system in the event that we were to switch. Right now, we have a sub-caller. What would happen if we went to the system and it doesn't say that, so it's just like a technical thing there. Recorded trainings for this again, so at the start of the year, we have to do all of these. These are provided to staff at the start of the year, and they have to complete it through a survey when they're done. They have to confirm that they've done it all, and I confirmed that with our attorney today, actually, and he says that is still okay to do. Some districts have you sign in each one and submit a thing each time. We just have it, all the links provided in one, and then the teachers can then take it at their leisure and not be forced to do them within like the time constraints that they.
So everybody is AED trained?
They will be with, yeah, with this.
What's the training for? Is there a website to go through? or-
Yeah, I can provide those to you too. Yep,
There's multiple.
yeah, they're like 30 to an hour minute videos with questions that they have to pass.
I'm sure I was certified through our American Heart Association. Could have done it for everybody, but I'll let it run out, darn.
Part of the plans too this year to address with the safety plans, and we will talk about this next week on the 20th. When Dutch County comes in to do some training with us, that we're going to be adding in some CPR training. We're gonna have at least 3 people CPR trained in each building on our emergency teams, and the other is an emergency. Receipt of acknowledgement is electronic. I had to add an electronic acknowledgement into that, that's not gonna change there. Stipends, so here's last year's stipends, here's recommended increases. This is the last thing that was in the handbook. Ever changed. So last year, you can see we had prices of volleyball coach from $700, ranging to, $300 for a wrestling coach, which we didn't even have a wrestling team, but we still had it as an offering, we just weren't able to fill that position, and didn't have enough kids interested in it. I'm recommending a 20% increase, which is shown in that second column. yes to all of them, yes to some of them, no to all of them. It's just a place to start the conversation. I feel like staff are underpaid for those positions and are often volunteering a lot of their time.
When's the last time those stipends were updated?
Before I got here. And this is my 4th year in the district.
So you said it was a 20% increase?
Correct.
So
Inflation.
at a minimum, you're talking a 5% year over year over the last 4 years. It could even be less than that, cause it could have been a longer period of time, right?
Correct. Yep.
So.
I don't have a problem with
Yeah, I
that.
don't see that as a problem, because if they hadn't been updated in 10 years, 20% over 10 years, they're keeping up with things.
Do we have all the coaching positions filled, or is there a way to?
We'd have to ask Mrs. Holes on that. I was not aware of anything that has been absent. I know volleyball has been filled, I think. Right? Okay, so volleyball is still filled, cross country is filled. We do not have enough that would necessitate the assistant coach for cross country. We just have the head coach for that. Boys basketball, last year we were able to fill, but we needed an extra coach. So we did put in the budget so that we could have an extra coach. There was a ton of extra boys that wanted to play basketball last year, and I anticipate a similar number this year of boys trying out, so.
I mean, do we really need a cross-country assistant head coach, or if you anticipate needing it for basketball, I would give it, put towards that.
Right, and so, you know,
There's
Do
no
we
other
feel-
assistants
so-
on that page.
okay, so then do we just take that line off and just have the head coach at 750? Cause we're not gonna do it this year.
Yeah, we don't need to take it off of there. Okay.
So co-curriculars, again, these prices have not been updated. So we can go a similar 20% across the board like we did with the other. Cheerleading advisor, I think, is actually under the extracurriculars. I'm not sure why that's listed in 2 places, because we have dance, cheerleading up here. I just noticed that now. So that might be,
I think because that was separate.
that should be separate.
There
right?
used to be a dance team years ago, my children
So
were
is that
in it.
even on, should that
Still
even be on
is.
there anymore then?
There is a dance team still?
Yeah.
Okay.
Correct.
So this is last year's numbers.
And to the best of my knowledge, they've been the same since I started here 4 years ago. Clubs, a lot of times are, you know, maybe once a week, and it could be year round, sometimes they're seasonal for a couple days a week. Whereas the athletics are kind of more intense. Which is why a lot of those co-curricular assignments are a lot less than $1 a month than coaching pay.
I'm okay with raising it 20% again. It hasn't been done that many years.
I would say give 10% to each and split the cost. If you wanna be fair.
So you're saying 10% for co-curricular, 10%
Yep.
for,
It's definitely not been 10 years, we've revised it since then.
oh, okay.
I was looking at
What are other districts doing comparatively?
We are low.
You're asking too much too soon. You gotta break it up a little bit. That's my opinion. You guys wanna go to policy on that, committee,
Yeah.
that's fine.
Defer to policy?
Yep.
Okay.
So we could,
Support staff. There is one thing that I want you to be aware of for the support staff handbooks. Just something to address with policy committee, and how you wanna handle this moving forward.
Could bring these to the policy committee next month. You could read them, do our first read on them. if you would.
And I think they need to have something to go with.
Yeah, we have to sign,
School year.
staff has to sign this during the PD, and that's the thing, so we can update some of those things with the financial stuff that you've indicated. We can just let staff know that there will be possibly some changes coming this year. So sick leave for support staff, this is for non-full-time staff. Our current contracts, so we have our policy that you have done as a district, that you voted for as a school board, that it's my job as the district administrator to come up with processes to make sure that policy is followed, right? So in editing some of those contracts, a lot of those were kept from previous administration. As it's spelled out in policy that you have, is that unused sick leave shall be accumulated up to a maximum of 20 days. Employees must use current year's allotment of sick days prior to using accumulated or bank days. So we currently, the process that we have in place using Skyward is that those sick hours do not go over for part-time. And it is also not spelled out in the handbook in terms of the differences between a full-time support staff member and a part-time. So if you have full-time, like Mr. Smithyman works full-time, he gets more sick time than others do because he works year-round. And it would say that in his contract. So his contract also states that he gets 60 days of rollover, but that's in violation of what the policy is. So when I checked with the attorney, he said that's something that we should look at addressing, how we want to. You can do it either way. We can address the policy and change it if you want to, or you can make sure that we adjust the procedures and then reissue different contracts next year, so that they match the policy.
And could the language say that, the contract would supersede policy, something like that?
You could, yes.
Then you're covering yourself.
Just rate the policy up as a percentage, so it essentially will transfer equally.
Right, because it's if you work full-time year-round, you should get more benefits than if you're working, 70% non-year-round. I think our instructional aides are at a 176-day contract, whereas, Mr. Smithyman's 260. So there's quite a bit of a difference in terms of benefits and sick time and all that should roll over for full-time versus part-time.
So basically, if I'm understanding this correctly, what's in question is just simply the amount they can carry over.
Yeah, because we have in their contract, or letters of intent, they're actually technically called, we have that they have rollover of 60 days for sick time for
maximum.
full-time. Maximum.
Maximum of 60 days.
But that does not match the policy, and whatever is written in the contract or letter of intent, your policy supersedes that. So whatever policy said would dictate. So if someone were to come to us and say, I'm gonna sue you, you didn't give me all my sick time, we would have to defer to the policy, not what's written in the contract.
and we can't write the policy to say that whether.
But it gets kind of,
contract would supersede.
yeah, and it gets a little, so I don't think we can, and it gets a little muddy when somebody is to say, well, previous administration did it. If they can show cases where we have honored that to staff, then, which we have, without changing the policy, we'd be kind of
Right.
trouble there.
I mean, I agree with Colton that I think it should be a percentage of what their contract is. So if, they get 10 days annually, they can roll over 200%, would be the maximum allotment, which would be 20 days, and that would actually be the policy in this case, but in the case of Chad, it would be 200% of what his annual allotment is, or whatever that percentage comes out to be. That way it's no matter whose contract is what, it's even across the board for all employees.
And so if you look at the full-time staff, professional staff sick leave. The board did address that prior to me getting here. Okay, so prior to, if you were hired in the district before January first, so this is for teaching staff, full-time staff, if you were hired prior to January first, 2000, you get 95 days maximum of rollover, and anybody after that gets 80. So the maximum for teachers, full-time staff is 80. What has been written in letters of intent to full-time support staff is currently 60. It's a little less than that, so that's something, you know, to consider whether I keep it at that. And the other thing to consider is that part-time support staff do not have any rollover right now in their letters of intent. But according to policy, that they should have up to 20.
And I will say they have been rolling over. Like, I can historically look at support staff and their sick times have been rolling.
Okay.
I would say it's something definitely should be looked at in committee.
You said you were gonna hop on that committee with us? Just saying.
So.
I got a list for you, Bernie.
Yeah, you know, so would it be easier, Chris, to change the policy?
It's totally up to you how you want to handle it.
Okay.
If you like the policy the way it's written, we would just need to change the language in the handbooks and then change the language when we reissue contracts next year. From what I understand, it's best to just leave them how they are this year, continue to do what we have done and honor what's written in the letters of intent.
Yep. So the issue, yeah.
Yep. So policy committee will take it on that.
Yep.
I did put in a professional development plan for everybody to look at. This year for professional development, what we're going to have is we will have just a Google sheet, and every day is on there for tab for teachers to see all year round. In the past, we've sent out emails with an attachment every time. This way it's kind of located in one hub and teachers know where to find it, and their communication is better, more open, I think. Feedback that we got from staff is that they like this better.
That was talked about a little bit last night at policy committee as well.
District administrator evaluation. So I did put that on there for reference for you. We, just to start talking about that, we can talk about how you want to evaluate me as the new district administrator. And that's based off of recommendations from WASDA. And what it is there's the different standard areas, and then you would evaluate me in those areas. So. That's just something to start thinking about. We don't need to vote on that today. If you want, it's just an option out there, just to kind of start thinking of, you want to go with something like that, or you'd like to see other options, different things we can do. Blacktop. We did talk about that last month, and we would bring this back up again. The blacktop codes, we're looking at the resurfacing of elementary, resurfacing of intermediate, and then paving and filling some holes. Looking at taking out the tree area at intermediate and repaving that, that would give us 12 additional spaces. And also looking at repainting over intermediate, because we can't really see the lines, and we need to add parking over there, especially for events. So, we talked about this in the policy committee, so I think I'll let you kind of.
Yeah, we've talked about it in the buildings committee. It was discussed that any type of seal coating, at this point of the year, the kids are gonna track it in the building and make an incredible mess. So fortunately, that ship has sailed for this season. Also, removing the tree over at Intermediate and paving that over was the recommendation of the Buildings Committee. That we do that to increase parking spaces. Because as everyone knows, whenever there's large amounts of parking there, it's not good. It was also the recommendation of the Buildings Committee that, we have some very high level but quite accurate resurfacing, repaving numbers. We wanna do a little bit more research into how long the parking lots are gonna last, repaving versus resurfacing versus seal coating. Not to say that it's gonna happen, but just to do our due diligence and do our homework to make sure that we're getting the best out of what we have. That includes taking like core samples, what's under our parking lots, because that makes a big difference on how long the top lasts. There's no stone under them, they don't last very long. So, you know, there again, it would just be throwing money after that. The other thing that was recommended by the Buildings Committee on the subject of the parking lots is that as long as we are restriping the intermediate school, there are consultancy firms that we don't know exactly, well, we have some ballpark prices on it. It would be under $1,000 that will come and do basically a traffic flow plan of your parking lot. That's what these people do. They say if you lay your parking stalls out in this fashion, you'll get an extra couple stalls or traffic will flow better. And now that we're taking that island out, it'll change the complete way that parking lot functions. So as long as we're painting the lines anyway, it's basically you just paint the lines in a different shape. And at least getting someone to come and look at it to try to say, hey, maybe since you're painting the lines, do it like this, and you can get another few parking spots and the traffic will flow better. Again, that's an option. I don't know what everybody thinks about that.
Yep, I can show you that. Sorry, I just needed to update the links here. So, the lowest proposal was from Applied Seal Coat, which we have used in the past. To re-seal intermediate is $12,500. To reseal intermediate with patching, it says patchwork with hot mix asphalt, that's $3,250. Striping the same yellow was included in that quote. And then we started talking about, okay, well, there is that kind of that weird island. No, it's not showing. Sorry about that. My system is working, so hold on. Hey, there we go. Okay, so here's our quotes. I just discussed those two. The third one, so we started talking about that weird island in the middle of intermediate, and we were to get rid of that. If we were to pave that area, it would be easier for snowplow. It would add 12 additional parking spaces, which doesn't sound like a lot, but I feel like that is a lot, especially when we're having concerts and things like that over there. That was, so to add that the extra parking is $12,700. So you're looking at $38,800 for everything. 3 to 5 is maintenance for
seal equipment to rush into next year, right away.
right. We could do it. Yeah, you could do it in
Well, and yeah, it's worth mentioning too that Clyde had mentioned they would hold these prices for us into next year.
I don't know if they'll do it into January. I just know he said he would honor the prices. I didn't ask, like, hey, are you gonna change them in January? I don't. Nothing's written. You can say, yeah, I told you that. Good. So that's always.
If we do this, it'll give us time to do your core samples, see what we have to do. We know it's underneath there.
38 is the seal coating, and it's not recommended we do that at all anymore this year.
Right, oh, that's right.
So
That would be next summer.
that would be a next summer thing anyway. Of all the stuff that's in this proposal, the repaving of, or the paving of that island to gain the parking spots and the restriping was what we had come up with as a, recommendation for what to do this year. Just because, again, if we go and we seal the parking lots, you know, the kids are gonna track that in the building and just ruin the floors. I guess it has happened in the past where they resealed it. You're shaking your head like you remember. And, they resealed it right before school started and it was not good.
So what's the total without resealing it for just the patchwork, removal of that island and restriping it? You know,
Good question, that would be
The.
12,700 plus an anticipated thousand, so $13,700.
I don't see why we wouldn't do that if I can get done before the school year starts.
It would be done prior to December, which would be the goal, because then we'd be ready for concerts.
And then, yeah,
December, not the school year, so.
Yep.
right.
The new year.
But like the paving, it is believed that it would be, they'd come in for a day, tear the island out, pack it down, cold, patch it,
Can you do it on a Saturday?
didn't ask.
That we were up to interrupt school.
Right,
We could, I mean, you could also get it restriped right away. That, I mean, that would be done in less than a month, I would imagine, it's a scheduling thing, it's a big job, but
right.
then you don't, we have to look at, you know, can we add more spots, and if we're adding extra space, then you have to come on and
Restripe it.
restrict it anyway. But I really think we have to look at the traffic flow, there are not clear cut lanes for the buses, there's not clear lanes for parent pickup, where are the arrows on there for families and for.
And now it's how much, it's only for $100,000?
It was believed it would actually be somewhere between $3,000 and $1,000 to do the traffic flow study and the recommendation by an engineering firm to, you can redesign your parking spaces, like angled parking spaces aren't very efficient, square them up. It would just be that's what these people do for a living, they design commercial parking lots for maximum traffic flow and usability. So, I think that would be money well spent as far as seeing as how we hold most of the concerts and everything there. That's the place we need to figure out we need to efficiently use our parking spaces. And so,
what is your recommendation?
I think we
facilities-
should wait till next year to address any parking lot issues. That's my recommendation. We survived how long? And we can't get seal chlorine done, it should all get done at once.
Maybe address it once the school year's over.
I mean, we'll get on it in spring, but.
So put it in spring, like, bring it up in March, April.
Yeah, I would say that's the time to start talking to the flag and all that, you know.
Eighth grade field trip. So traditionally, the eighth graders have had that retreat at the end of the year. The purpose of that is to celebrate their time at HNR, but also to work on skills like leadership and teamwork. They have been doing the Central Wisconsin Environmental Station in Amherst Junction, Wisconsin. It is an overnight trip, so it would require board approval to do that. We have done this for, I think every year that I've been here, so this will be the 4th year, I believe, of doing that. And this year's trip would take place April 16th to April 18th.
That is not correct.
Okay.
Remember, April 2nd to the 4th. That's
Okay.
Good Friday.
April 2nd through the 4th. Thank you.
Yes.
We did try to get it later, which is one way drafts there. We're trying to get it as late as possible to kind of have that incentive for eighth graders at the end of the year to kind of like that culminating event, but the trips to there fill up fairly quickly. So. Other eighth grade trips are, you know, not overnight. There are different options for camping things out there. There are a lot of districts will take kids to water park parade. So, you know, there are other things out there, but this has been very popular with families and the students who have experienced this in the past. And it was requested by the current eighth grade students that they would like to have this.
Make a motion to approve the eighth grade second and fourth overnight trip.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Discuss and take possible action on before care, after care.
Yeah, before care, after care, you wanted us to look into different options available for that. I just brought this up for reference for the hours and rates. Rates stayed the same, hours are a little different. Half an hour is cut off of the start of the day and at the end of the day. That gives us the ability to stagger staff. So we will have 2 staff on in before care and in after care. Not both starting at the same time, but both there when there's the bulk of the kids will be there. So that way there are 2 adults in the room to help with the kids. And that has helped us to increase the amount of before care and after care kids. And Angie Hose has been working with YMCA. We're looking at partnering with them. This is something that YMCA has confirmed with us in Watertown that they can provide services in our building starting next year in 25-26. The rates would increase. We would be looking at, it's tough to say, I think you can expect about $6 per hour per day, something like that. I think it's gonna be about double what families are paying now to do it, but that would increase the time. They would have 2 hours before school, staffed by 2 YMCA staff members, and then after care to be staffed by 2 staff members again through YMCA, and it'd be 2.5 hours after school. So, and that's something that the district does not pay. We don't pay them, we don't staff them, we sign an agreement, they lease out our space for free. But then that frees up our aides back into the building instead of taking time away from student services, which is what we're doing now. I think next year that's certainly a route we could go, and then, like I said, we would increase our services. Right now, we have approximately 30 families that are going to be taking advantage of before care and after care, and we had to turn down quite a few. I think with partnering with the YMCA next year would be a great opportunity to increase that number and increase services for families.
Before or after, it's all, funded out of Fund 80, right? So technically, if we had our own before and after care employees, they wouldn't technically be taking aid time per se.
Right, if we go the road of staffing and we're not going through the YMCA, is that what you're asking me?
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, right, so we don't, obviously we don't have the people to, we're using our aides to,
So
do
if
the
we,
before and after care, because we don't have, say, a surplus of staff that we could just allot for that, which is what YMCA is essentially providing, but, I mean, no.
good question, I did look into that. So there is, we would have to declare ourselves as a daycare entity, and then we have to follow all daycare laws and rules, regulations, if we were to staff as a daycare, which would mean now, if you have current daycare stipulations, one example would be if you have any child who's 4 years old in a daycare, you can only have 1 to 13, that's 1 staff member per 13. And then it goes up from there, I think. So that's certainly something to consider. Right now, we are not being run through through that. We're running it as a school, as a service, not as a daycare. We don't have to follow those guidelines.
What about as far as getting,
But the YMCA would have to.
sure, help or, help from the high school students as a, co-op type of situation?
We do have 1 high schooler coming in for aftercare, and she is doing that through youth apprenticeship.
And then, so she's as an aide technically, or as a, I mean, does that count to a, well, she's not gonna fulfill part-time hours or meet full-time anyways, I guess I should say, but,
So youth apprenticeship, she's paid through the school district, but not paid to the dollar amount that other support staff would be getting. Yeah, so she's getting
but I mean, it
less.
doesn't count towards aid, in the classroom type of stuff.
It does not, correct,
Yeah.
yep.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds good working with, through the YMCA, I don't know, if it wouldn't hurt to
And that's.
talk with parents about that, or send out a survey before you
Yeah.
do something like that. I mean, I'm sure there'd be complaints about it, if you double the price of anything, there's gonna be complaining about it, but
There's a vetting process for the individuals that come out and see.
We have to do background checks and all that.
Mhm. The dollar amount wouldn't be too much more, I mean, but as it is, I believe, our $3 per hour is,
I know it's
Very, very low,
Yes,
so.
I would, yeah, you're gonna get griping, it's just the way it is. We've raised prices in the past and you get the phone calls and emails. Yeah.
It has to do with the limits.
Pardon?
It just has to do with the YMCA in Watertown,
What about the
the
ones?
Watertown YMCA,
What about it?
that they had an investigation on child abuse that was ongoing in June, so just, that's all. I didn't look into it, but.
Okay, so what we're talking about as far as changes would be next year, we'd be looking for a motion to, accept what he's presented for this year.
I'll make a motion to present what Chris has presented for the before care, after care for this, current school year.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have discuss and take possible action on alternative open enrollment application.
I can't display that because of student confidentiality, I don't wanna display the names of the students, but there were a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that were shown to you. One was a repeat from last month, so I didn't amend that to an approve, so there are 2 for approval, 3 for deny. 3 were special education, no space available. 2 were special education students, we open enrollment was voted on by you and passed as a school board, and you have limits set for the number of special ed kids we can take in. And one of them is a sibling of one of the special education students, and she was put on to be with the sibling, so that would be not in the best interest of the student, so that's why there's the 3 deny and the 2 approve.
You have any reservations about not approving?
No, we have room for the 2 that were approved.
Make a motion to accept the, open enrollment application as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now the fun begins.
Oh, yeah.
Discuss and take possible action on policy manual 33.1 update for board review and approval.
So, we are very behind on our policy updates. So this is currently this is policy manual 33.1 updates. I'm actually meeting with our DEWA rep tomorrow morning to go over 33.2, so we're already behind one. As you can see, this is from December of 2023. So, this is a first read for you. We do not, you as a board don't need to take action on this today. This is just for you as a first read for your reference to possibly take action at the next board meeting. So I did attach the overview in there, and I wanted you to see that it tells you kind of a summary or highlights of what each policy is. So, for instance, policy 100 talks about local public office holder and official is added, as well as moving the description of district records custodian under its own heading. So a lot of these are definitions or verbiage changing. That's for you to look at as a board and do your first read, and then look at possibly taking action next month.
So board members can serve as volunteer bus drivers under certain conditions, just so you guys know.
I'm in. They'll never want me to drive again.
I think you should.
Of course you do, I appreciate that. You're
I
a heck of a guy.
highlighted some questions I'll ask you separately, via email between now and the next meeting.
All right, preliminary annual budget, thank you to Carrie Smithman for all of her hard work getting this ready. This is our first attempt at this, as you know, we have to present a tentative budget in August. A lot of this is best guess right now because the official budget doesn't come out until October. You can see that 23-24, our general fund, which is Fund 10, we're getting 80% of our fees from property taxes. Last year we were at about 2.5. This year we're projecting 2.7. There was some questions about state equalized aid. We did talk about this last year. In June, we talked about our revenue. We had a little bit of excess. Depending on who we asked, and we were still looking for 100% clarity on that, is that we may have to pay a little bit of penalty in that. And if that is true, then we would lose a certain percentage of that state aid that would have to come back to the district through property taxes. I don't know the exact dollar amount or 100% guarantee that we will until we partner with the business person to get confirmation of that. That's something to keep in mind. We did lose some state equalized aid also in ESSER funds, which I did bring that up earlier in April. So $166,000 in state money we did lose because we don't have those ESSER funds coming in anymore. But that's for every district in the state, it's not just us. And the ESSER funds were the COVID relief money. Any questions about the tentative budget as it is projected right now? And I would refer all questions to Gary.
My biggest question was, I mean, we had less revenue than this year, but we had $300,000 less in expenses. What was the big savings there? I'm just going through it.
For this year or last year? I
This
will
year.
tell you, the budget for this year, there is a transaction with the, open enrollment that we don't know that number yet, and that is, last year was a $685,000 expense. That is not included in the expense in this portion, because we don't know that number, so our expense total there, at the
So
bottom
there's
line.
another $685,000 that could come out, you're saying?
Correct.
Or more,
Or
and that's,
more,
that's
yeah.
set by our governor, and he sets that on August 15th, which is
So
tomorrow.
tomorrow.
So, we can answer that question tomorrow.
No, I know there's a
So
lot,
there's
until
a
October,
huge-
there's a lot of numbers, but that was just, you know,
That's gonna, yeah, so that expense number is gonna go up tremendously.
sure.
Does that answer your question somewhat?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much, you can take this as a grain of salt.
Yes,
Yeah, so you have all that.
yes.
The financing for schools is always very interesting to people not in the school world. The actual budget doesn't come out until October, and we sure won't know for sure until we get that third Friday count is a big part of that too, how many students will be in our building on that third Friday. Also.
Other than that, I appreciate the work you guys are doing on it.
Very much. So administrative reports, you ready for yours?
Sure. So part of my proposal, starting my new position, was looking at a district administrator entry plan. I teachers, staff members. So throughout those first 100 days, I'm just gonna be listening and doing as much as possible. My goal is to attend town meetings, attend committee things. I'm going to be sending out surveys. I will send out times for meet and greets, where people can come in and speak to me about questions and things. And, the overarching goal is that we're looking at relationships, engagements, creating, and from that, the feedback that we get from staff, and from families, and from students, is that we wanna use that to drive our new district goals. Right now, there were 5 district goals that we have, and they're through 2025, so we'll need to develop new goals. So here's outline my goals. So we're looking at, collaborating, being more transparent, being more visible, being approachable. I want to gain a better understanding of the HNR community. I think I know the school pretty well. I think the referendum taught me a lot about, depending on where you live, everybody's very different with how they approach things. So I think I need to have a better understanding of all of the communities and not just, select pieces. So that's part of it too. Part of it will be to review and assess organizational structure, culture, climate, teaching and learning operating systems, business and budgeting systems, performance appraisals, and key work processes and practices. I've already started to dive into our organizational processes when we're looking at, it's called an organizational chart, which is kind of a hierarchy of how the district is run, where does the school board fit, where does the superintendent fit, where do all the other administrative duties fit. So I have a draft of that ready to go, and I will present that hopefully next month's meeting. So that would be, we're already making some progress with that. And then also looking at assessing strengths, areas of growth, and opportunities that are affecting our areas. So data collection, individual conversations, surveys, site visits, data analysis. And then here's everybody that I plan on involving in this process through the 100 days. Board members, administration, teachers, parents, clubs, coaches, food service, municipal administration, media representatives, realtors, basically anybody who's willing to talk with us, or to talk with me, give their opinion of, hey, how do you think the district is doing, where do you want to see the district go? And that's kind of what we'd like to do. I don't want to come up and say, hey, here's what we're working on for the next 3 years. It's a community. I think we should all work on it together and come up with where we want the district to go, not where just the school wants it to go. I think that it's a community and we should all have a voice. So the following areas will be reviewed as part of this process. So all of these things are currently looking at review. So we did already talk about staff and student handbooks, job descriptions and duties. I talked about that. Staff evaluation. I just attended a meeting this week. We currently use Frontline to evaluate staff. We do need to revamp that. That'll be coming out in September. We did a kind of a hybrid of the state model last year, but it wasn't the full, complete model. So we do need to address that. District school plans and goals, our district and our school report cards, professional development, curriculum alignment, assessment practices, budgeting, facility studies. A lot of this stuff we already have started to do since April, because I did start April, but you can see that there's a lot involved in this.
Good plan. Other than that, for me, we just wanted to highlight upcoming events for everybody quick. 4K open house is tomorrow from 5:30 to 7 here at Intermediate. Open house, professional development starts next week for teachers. They were really excited to get that welcome back letter from me, I heard. Thank you for ruining my summer vacation. And, so they are very excited to be back. No. We have the 20th, I believe, is when Dutch County is going to be here to do our active shooter drill, which is great. So if you want to come on by and see that, it should be good for us.
review our safety plans. Open house is the 21st, that includes pictures, so that will be 4 to 6, at both buildings at the same time. And first day of school is August 26th. And I do want to clarify this for families, because I did have a couple questions about this when I released the district monthly newsletter. We had school the 26th, the 27th, and the 28th. I pulled the school calendar so we can see what I'm talking about. So we do have school the 26th, the 27th, and the 28th. We do not have school on the 29th. Professional development, and then we do not have school on the 30th. There were some calendars out there that for some reason were not right. I did update the link so that parents are aware. Now there were questions about that. And the reason why our PD looks so strange this year is that we partnered with Hartford Joint One to do a guest speaker. Dr. Ross Green is going to be presenting at Hartford, and we're participating in that because it's a whole social, emotional, behavioral training for staff, and it's very much needed in this day and age to support kids and to support each other. So that was already set prior to the calendars being set, which is why we have PD 3 days and then another day. And we had to kind of move up our school year because of the Aaron, the PGA tour coming here next year.
On the 21st from 4 to 6, does the board need to come for pictures?
Yes, that'd be great. You'd like to?
So from 4 to 6. Colton, you can use this one.
I took my picture once and it wasn't printed, so I refuse.
Any other announcements or events?
No.
Okay. Committee reports, we'll start with you, Clayton. Facilities, do you have anything you want to add? Facilities committee?
No, I still would recommend that we look at line striping the parking lot at a minimum, because there are basically no lines in the parking lot at the intermediate. And I would look at a traffic flow plan for that, because if the board doesn't feel like we should pave anything or do any of the restoration or any of that, that's, but at a minimum, people should know where to park. So, that'd be all I really have to say about that.
So the line striping and the traffic flow plan, what was the cost for those two?
The line striping was around $1,000, and the traffic flow plan would be $300 to $1,000.
So you're looking at $2,000. But definitely, I'd be for that. Get done soon. Need to make a motion for that?
And technically, we had, increased the limit that
Yes, we had
decisions
increased.
we made to 2,500, moved by Chad.
Correct.
And
So
would
that's under 2,500.
the
That
board
would
be,
fall under maintenance because you should be doing striping annually.
and would, those two things, are we considering that two different things, or one and the same? Reason I ask, if they're two separate, it's a $5,000 expenditure, up to. If it's considered together, it's $2,500. So we should clarify that now, if we're considering that two separate entities, a flow and study, and striping, or if it's two separate things.
So the flow and
The traffic flow
study
study,
and the street are all at the vehicle,
yes.
and the anticipated cost is 2,000.
You have to restrict after you reseal though.
You will, yes, but we're gonna go an entire school year without striping of any kind.
In all reality, you're talking about 2 days a year, concerts would have a real physical problem.
But are you also looking at it as for a better traffic pattern for buses?
I mean, whatever traffic pad, I guess, I don't know, paint lines to paint over them next year seems foolish in my opinion.
That's if we reseal next year, if we don't go for a different option of repaving in, so, again, just to talk about it for a second. The purpose of the study of the condition of the parking lots and what's under them is to plan for the next 5, 10, 15 years of, if the parking lots are gonna last 5 years unsealed, and then they'd have to be replaced anyway, don't do anything with them, other than paint lines on them for 5 years and tear it out. We need to figure out what that projection looks like for the next 5, 10, 15 years and get a plan going, so we don't all of a sudden get hit with, because I mean, just for instance, the current price through a paving company to do this parking lot is $4.93 a square foot, or a total of $317,000. So the facilities committee is recommending that we start developing some plans for this, so we're not getting slapped with, say, $500,000 in paving in 1 year. And with those plans, we might not be sealing them next year. Because if it's recommended that the parking lots be redone in 3 years, why seal them? If it's recommended that with sealing, they go another 12 years, then I agree. We will be sealing over painted lines. But we don't know that yet, and I just find it prudent that people know where to drive in, like I
Vote on
said.
it if you want, I don't care.
That's
Is
just.
there any other alternative to a temporary fix, putting up signs, maybe for it to try and create flow with the bus and parent drop off? That seemed to be more prevalent issue right here as far as anything with the level of consistency up there at the intermediate. Can this be remedied for the season with some signage that's put out there that can also be taken down and stowed away over the weekends and stuff? Or can we put out Monday morning to create a traffic flow pattern, and then we can visit this then next year when we really decide as far as where we're looking at the budget, finances, and everything else. And if we wanna take a more aggressive move, or if we wanna stick to the same plans, is there any alternative to?
Well, I mean, now that,
To
you know,
avoid the
yeah,
pain.
right, I guess we hadn't considered that, or I hadn't considered that, you know.
It would just seem like we might, right now, we're waiting on our budget to come in October. Maybe this is an alternative that we can push right now, and I would think that bus drivers and parents would probably be able to read, signage that we put out there, and if we have to pull it in, in the event of a concert, if we have to pull it in the event of snow removal, which is going to happen, what really good is a lot of all the signs and striping and everything else like that. If for half the season, we're gonna see weather patterns come in that's gonna cover it and everything. I would think that some temporary signage would probably accomplish the same thing right now, and then we can maybe even take a more aggressive approach towards the lots in the springtime and see where we're sitting in the budget, whether we're operating in the surplus or not.
That's, yeah, valid point. I just think
It was just-
something should be done as far as, it may not be the painting, but something should be done as far as traffic flow for concerts and things like that. That's the main concern. I think the teachers are all smart enough to figure out how to park and where to park on day-to-day operations.
It was also brought to my attention, what about the utilization of the Dodge County Sheriff's Department to come out and regulate some traffic flow?
There's also DCERT, that's Dodge County Emergency Traffic Control.
Without honestly, I think doing a remote site, say parking at the ranch and busing to the intermediate Salesville, I don't think you're gonna accommodate a traffic flow pattern when there's.
That will
nothing
take it,
there.
right.
You're going from 0 to 100.
Right.
Yeah, honestly, I think a separate site with busing would be the best and safest, honestly. Eliminate cars at that site that day, and not having people outside, for one thing, waiting in the line.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, we had a harder time getting people into the building than we did getting into the parking spot. That generated far more complaints, I think, than the parking space. And if we had any incidents, Chris, up there, of recent with events we've had pertaining to parking, vendors, any damage to vehicles or property?
Nothing that was reported.
Okay.
Alright. Look into other options, I'll bring it up to the committee, and we'll.
It just might be more cost efficient right now.
There's definitely a problem on Johnson, I'll give you that every day of the week, but to just spend money for 2 days out of the year seems kind of foolish too, in my mind. like I said, I think a better option would be to somehow put off-site park at the ranch and bus parents to the site, I don't know, something.
No, I
Could be
agree, and
thoughts.
those are the kind of thinking and, you know, options that need to be looked at. I agree. So, I guess I'll take that to the facilities committee and get back to you next month on what they say about it.
Thank you. Sam, do you have anything from the finance committee?
Not really, Chris did an awesome job getting some information put together for our first meeting we had, and there were good questions that were asked, we talked about our fund balances. Next meeting is going to be 9/11, September 11th, so I'll remember that. We'll miss it, I don't think I'll miss it, so, and I think we'll have some answers then on the questions that were brought up at the beginning of the meeting tonight about where we sit with those allocated funds and, you know, a little more of a concrete answer. Thank you for everything you've done with the budget, the tentative budget, and, we'll look forward to tomorrow, hearing what the number is.
Okay, and then Brian, policy and communication committee?
So we discussed some stuff last night, when we first discussion about what we use for legal aspects of the policy updates. We use the old one, those terms right now, those ask why we don't use ESP. So, Michelle is looking into the two different groups and see where we wanna go with that. We also talked a lot about communication. We're gonna start working on a chart for us, like if Chris is gone for a day, who the teacher is going to, and have it like a 3-meet, so if Chris is gone, Andy's not here, they go to Andy, if she's not here, who's the third person? We're gonna do it for all the administrators, so that everybody knows who to contact, it's out there for all the teachers and staff to work with, kind of something similar to the work chart that Chris is working on. There also was brought up about explanation of roles, like what teacher teaches what, there's really not a whole lot out there, you know, you have a 4th grade teacher, you have, who does the math and all that stuff, a little more description, and have that online, for parents. Community sessions was brought up, we should have community sessions to get some, information out to communities, they used to do it years ago, and I thought that'd be a good way to go. We do have the Facebook page, that has worked wonders for us, but there's other avenues we wanna try, look at and discuss for that as well. Talked about, just a lot of different little things. We didn't have any staff members there last night, next meeting we will. And we can go over some of the stuff we talked about tonight, like the personal days, the stipends and all that stuff, so. It's gonna be a busy group. I think it's gonna be a fun, good group to work with. Suzanne was there, Andrea was there, so looking forward to it.
So I'll just add, it was asked what the cost, what we pay Neola for help with policies. We pay about $4,000 a year. WASB is $4,500 a year. Neola, does cover 80% of the schools in the state of Wisconsin as far as policy work and updates. Other than that, anybody have anything else? I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.